It's only week 7, and it appears we've already had the game of the year in the SEC between Georgia and Alabama, and now we're shaping up to have the game of the year in the Big Ten, as number 2 Ohio State travels to take on number 3 Oregon in Eugene. This game, guys, has been circled on our calendar for months. This is the must-see game of the weekend, and I do believe that it will live up to the hype. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. Ready to break down the Buckeyes and the Ducks, a game with massive Big Ten title implications, but massive college football playoff implications as well. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of our exclusive expert picks, where we are giving you some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. We are currently beating out over 80% of the national handicappers. We're doing that this year. We've also done it for each of the last 6 years. One of the best records in the country, one of the lowest prices in the country, and we're offering you all that for just 1 year-long subscription. So some guys are saying, hey, you've got to sign up for a week. You got to sign up for a month. We're saying you get everything for that low price for a full year. So do not miss out on that, guys. The link for that down in the description below. Take advantage of it and become a member of our GE Nation. So I'm pumped for this game. I mean, who isn't, right? I mean, week 7, and we're already getting our second top 4 matchup of the year. Again, Bama, Georgia a few weeks ago, now number 2 and number 3. Talk about a fantastic season. It's already been insane. It's just going to continue to add to the chaos this Saturday. But Ohio State, obviously the perennial favorite in the Big Ten, now taking on an Oregon team that is now in their first year in the conference. That just adds to the excitement, adds to the intrigue of this game. And I'll start on the offensive side of the ball as we break down the X's and O's here, and we'll start with Ohio State. Look, they're doing exactly what we thought they'd do. Both teams are, really. But Ohio State, look, they're a top 10 unit. They're averaging over 500 yards per game, 288 passing yards per game, over 220 rushing yards per game. They've scored at least 35 points in every game so far this year. They're efficient. They're explosive. They're methodical. I mean, they've got everything going for them. Will Howard has done very well transferring in from Kansas State, completing over 71% of his passes for over 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions. The offensive line has been insanely strong. Howard has only been sacked twice. The line as a whole has given up only 4 sacks this year. Quinshon Judkins living up to the hype after transferring in from Ole Miss, 468 yards, 7.8 yards per carry so far this year. Travion Henderson not far behind him, rushing for over 330 yards this season. And in the wide receiver core, you've got 2 guys that have over 400 reception yards, led by Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, both who have been absolutely unbelievable. Both have been Howard's top targets, so much so those 2 players alone have combined for 11 of the 14 Ohio State passing touchdowns. Ohio State quarterbacks have thrown for 14 touchdowns. Howard has thrown 12 of them, 11 reception touchdowns between Smith and Egbuka. Shows how reliable and how big of a target both of those guys are. But the key for Ohio State in this game, we know they've got the talent, we know they've got the speed, we know they've got the coaching. The key for them in a game like this is they've got to get off to a better start. If you've watched Ohio State football over the course of this season, they have not been a great first quarter, really a first half team. Take a look at the numbers. Against Akron in week 1, they only led 7-3 at the end of the first quarter, only led 17-3 at halftime. Yes, Western Michigan, they did look good. Ironically, Western Michigan was the one game where they dominated from start to finish and really looked really good in that first half. But outside of that, Marshall, it was a tie game at the end of the first quarter. They only led by 14 at halftime. Against Michigan State, only led 3-0 at the end of the first quarter, only led 24-7 at halftime. And against Iowa, they only led Iowa 7-0 at halftime before coming alive in that second half and winning 35-7. So, excluding Western Michigan, take that game out of the equation, Ohio State is outscoring their other 4 opponents just 24-10 in the first quarter. They have not been doing a very good job of getting off to a slow start. They're coming off very sluggish, and you cannot have that in a hostile environment in Eugene, a very difficult place to play against a very good Oregon team. So the Buckeyes, I'm very anxious to see how quickly they can get off to a fast start. And if they don't, will the defense be able to bail them out by preventing Oregon's offense from getting on the board? Because here's the thing with Oregon's offense. They're pretty dang good too. You know, the Ducks are averaging over 458 yards per game. They're averaging over 294 through the air, over 164 on the ground. Dillon Gabriel, the transfer quarterback from Oklahoma, has thrown for nearly 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions, although all 3 of those coming in the last 2 games. The Ducks have scored at least 31 points in all of their games, with the exception of that Week 1 win against Idaho. Weird anomaly there where they only won by 10. Jordan James has been great at running back, 552 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. 5 different players have at least 100 reception yards, led, of course, by Tez Johnson. You know, and here's the thing for Oregon, right? A lot of people are pointing fingers at them, saying they're not looking as good offensively as they should. They're not looking, winning the games by as large of a margin as they should. But bottom line is, and you can say the same for Ohio State, both teams are undefeated. Both teams are getting the job done. And I expect both these offenses and teams as a whole to look a little bit different in the game of the year. It's almost as if Oregon and Ohio State, both have had favorable schedules up until this point, have been just doing what they can to get by before the big test, which obviously is this one. But you take a look at Oregon a little bit closer. They've looked really good offensively and have kind of changed their tune over the last few weeks. They barely survived Idaho, as we mentioned, and they barely survived Boise State, as we mentioned. They've won their last 3 games against Oregon State, UCLA, and Michigan State, all by at least 21 points. So that's, I think, an encouraging sign if you're Oregon. Is, yeah, they might be covering the spread or anything like that, but they are winning by double digits. They are taking care of business. The thing for me is they've got to keep converting in the red zone. The last couple of weeks, that's been a bit of a problem, especially from Dylan Gabriel. If you look at the numbers here, last 2 weeks, turnovers in the red zone. UCLA, they were up 28-3, so they were getting off to a fast start, but they had a 96-yard pick six. Had an opportunity to get a late score at the end of the first half, and Gabriel threw a 96-yard pick six. Against Michigan State, they were up 21-0 at halftime and won 31-10, but he threw an interception at the Michigan State 1-yard line and the Michigan State 11-yard line. So making sure that Oregon does not come up empty-handed when they're in Ohio State territory is going to be key, especially against such a good defense, such a good team as the Buckeyes have. So it's an interesting converse of the offenses here. Ohio State's getting off to these slow starts and putting it on in the second half. Oregon, you could argue, especially over the last couple of weeks, is putting it on in the first half and then taking their foot off the gas because they've got the game locked up. They can't do that against Ohio State. It will never be fully locked up against Ohio State until that clock hits 0. So start strong, play a full 60 minutes for both these teams, but for Oregon, again, making sure you convert in the red zone. That's going to be massive. Defensively, that's where the games could be won, right? I mean, both teams have great offenses. Both teams have good defenses. But I don't think there's any argument by anybody that Ohio State does have the better defense in this game. The Buckeyes actually, as a matter of fact, have the #1 defense in the country right now. So no one is ahead of them. The Buckeyes are giving up just 202.4 yards per game. They are 4th in the country versus the pass, giving up less than 130 passing yards per game. They're 3rd versus the run, allowing just 72.6 rushing yards per game. Granted, this is the best offense Ohio State will have faced all year long. They've got a good defense. We know they've got a good defense, but the numbers are a bit skewed when they've played, Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Michigan State, and Iowa. None of those offenses are all that good. Oregon obviously going to be the toughest test for them by far. They have to find a way to shut down Dylan Gabriel in this game. He's a phenomenal quarterback. He's got a great arm. If he takes care of the football, he's going to be very difficult, very hard to stop. Because I've got a lot of faith in Ohio State's front seven, right? I've got a lot of faith in the guys up front for the Buckeyes to bottle up the run game and, in a way, make Oregon one-dimensional. I don't expect the Ducks to have a lot of success running the ball here. They're going to take away that balance. So if that's the case, they then have to find a way to pressure Dylan Gabriel. They've got to find a way to get some interceptions or some turnovers off of him. And that's not entirely far-fetched or not too hard to ask, considering the Buckeyes front seven already has 17 sacks on the year. 17 sacks on the year, have forced 9 turnovers this season, and Oregon's offensive line has already given up 7 sacks. So pressure and turnovers off of Dylan Gabriel going to be massive. I'm not too concerned about the ground game because I think the front seven is going to do their job. Oregon defensively, they've got a top 10 unit. Okay, so we're going to hear so much about how good Ohio State's defense is, and it is, and they deserve that praise. But Oregon's got a solid one too, and you can argue that Oregon has faced a better schedule, a tougher schedule than Ohio State has. They do have a win over a Boise State team that's in the top 20 right now. That win people freaked out about, said it shouldn't have been that close. Boise State's looking really, really good. They've got the Heisman frontrunner in Ashton Jeanty at their disposal. They did beat Oregon State. They did beat Michigan State. Both those teams won. Ohio State won by a little bit more. I think 31 for Ohio State, 21 for Oregon. Could have been more without those red zone interceptions. But bottom line is I think Oregon allowed 250 yards to Michigan State. Ohio State allowed 246. So defensively, both those teams did the same in the one common opponent that they have shared. But the Ducks are a top 10 unit. They're giving up just 263 total yards per game, 162 through the air, only 101 on the ground. As we mentioned, they're a little bit more battle-tested than Ohio State, but still the opponents they played haven't been all that great. what I'm looking at here for Oregon, what they have to do is they kind of got to decide which area do you want to hone in on. Because the problem with Ohio State and how good their offense is, if you stop Quinshon Judkins and you stop the run, good for you. They've got some great receivers and an accurate quarterback at their disposal. If you hone in on the pass and you stop the passing attack, then you've got a great running back and a great offensive line at your disposal. So Ohio State, you can argue, is a little more of a balanced offense. Maybe not nearly as explosive as Oregon, but they've got maybe a little bit more weapons than that of the Ducks right now. If I'm Oregon, if I'm Dan Lanning, I'm saying let's hone in on the run. I'm going to make sure Ohio State has no balance. I'm going to force them to win the game solely through the air with Will Howard, who has looked good so far, but now is facing the best team he's seen all year, maybe the best team he's seen in a couple years. Good opponents at Kansas State. Oregon on the road, maybe a little bit different. I'm going to rely on my secondary. I'm going to rely on my secondary and a defensive line that has 16 sacks on the year to create pressure on him, to try to force some turnovers. And as long as we don't allow any big-time plays and don't allow any massive yards after the catch, Oregon can stay in this game. That's the philosophy if I'm Dan Lanning and the Ducks heading in to Saturday night. So, again, guys, this is a historic game for so many different reasons. Massive game for Oregon in their first year in the conference. A top 3 matchup in the middle of October. The second type of matchup we've had so far this year. It's very rare that we get these type of caliber games, at least so many in the regular season. We saw Georgia, Bama. We saw Ohio State, Oregon. Next week, there's a great potential to see a top 5 matchup between Texas and Georgia. So, again, getting these type of games in the regular season, especially now, not, the season finale, but in the middle of October, is very, very special and very rare. So soak this game in on Saturday night. And for me, when I'm picking this game, it's tough. It's really, really difficult because bottom line is both teams are taking care of business. Both teams deserve to be ranked where they are. Both teams are playing very good football, but neither has looked absolutely amazing. Again, Ohio State has started slow. They haven't really looked great in the first half. Oregon hasn't looked great in the second half. They've got to cut down these turnovers that we've seen the last few weeks. And I'll tell you right now, back in the preseason, when we did our game-by-game predictions for every single team, I picked Oregon to win this game. I picked the Ducks to win this game in Eugene. I felt very good about that pick. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have not seen anything from either team that has made me go, whoa, they're much better than I expected, or whoa, they're much worse than I expected for me to change that pick. See, a lot of people out there picking Ohio State. Would not be shocked in the slightest to see the Buckeyes go on the road and win this game. But I believe in the power of home field advantage. I believe in the power of Eugene at night. I like this Oregon team to get the job done in what should be an instant classic in the Big Ten. I like Dylan Gabriel a little bit more than Will Howard right now. And if he can limit his mistakes, if he can correct those mistakes and actually convert in the red zone, even if it was just a field goal, I do believe that Oregon will come away with the win. The Ducks start strong. Ohio State does not. And Oregon rides that fast start all the way until the clock hits 0. It will be a close game. It will be decided by one possession. But give me the Ducks to win, pull off the mini upset in Eugene, solidify themselves currently as the best team in the Big Ten in their first year in the conference. So guys, there you have it. Taking Oregon over Ohio State. Leave your thoughts and predictions down in the comments below. We'll have so much more to discuss as the week goes on, but this is by far the game of the week, and we cannot wait to see how it plays out. But until Saturday night, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of those expert picks, some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. Do not miss out on those. Again, the link for that down in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.